What's going on, Changemakers? My name is Michael, and welcome back to Power to Change Digital, where we want to show you what God's doing all across our ministry in order to help people encounter Jesus today, impact Australia tomorrow, and reach the nations for eternity. Today, I've got with me Brian. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things that he does in ministry. I hope you enjoy this and that it's really beneficial for you to kind of get an insight as to really all the different things that you can do to serve Jesus within Power to Change. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
So we were just talking about Packers fans. You don't like them, right?
What I've learned really about Packers fans, I've learned from one of the great theologians, Scott McKnight. So if you're familiar with the book, The Jesus Creed.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to McKnight's podcast over the years, and he'll often start a lecture on the new perspective on Paul by bagging out Packers fans for a couple of minutes. He hates the cheese thing.
He just hates them.
He hates the cheese. It's the cheesehead, yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know, the Packers, it's the Green Bay Packers. They're a American football team. And yeah, I feel like they're neutral. I feel like it's kind of one of those things where I don't love them or hate them. They're just kind of like there. And sometimes I like watching like Aaron Rodgers play or something. Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people have a neutral thing for them. The Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots are like the two. You either love them or hate them. There's no middle ground. You love the Cowboys or you hate the Cowboys, and it's like I'm a Collingwood fan, and I'm the scum of the earth.
Who was the very unwise person who encouraged you to barrack for Collingwood?
So the reason that I became a Collingwood fan, I have kind of two lines of thought with this, because I'm clearly not Australian. My parents don't support any team. I wasn't brainwashed into becoming a Richmond fan because it was the bandwagon team. So I immediately saw that. I was like, I don't want to be on the bandwagon team. So I lived in Carlton at the time, so I could have been a Blues fan. I was like, hey, why not? They're kind of that neutral team. People kind of pity them more than anything.
They do, yes.
But that's why I didn't want to be one. I was like, I don't want to be here for 2 years on a visa or however long I end up getting to be here and just never see a win. So then I was thinking, all right, well, I love Fitzroy and Collingwood as an area. I love that part of town. Fitzroy's club is now in Brisbane. So they don't have a team, and I'm, as of, way long ago, like that's before I was even born, I think that happened. But
probably was around the time you were born, actually.
Yeah. So
90s.
Collingwood then was like, all right, that's the team I'm going to go for. And my roommate at the time, Andrew, who was a stinter here, he played a bit of club footy.
He played for East Brunswick, was it?
It was in East Brunswick, but it was a branch off of Collingwood. So they wore like the Collingwood colors.
Yes, they did, yes.
And so I was like, all right, Collingwood's my team. That's the response. People are like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. Like, you just chose them. You didn't know any better. The other side of it is I totally knew how hated they were, and I wanted to become a fan of them because of how hated they were.
You wanted to be controversial, didn't you?
100%. Like, I wanted all of the Australians I tell, yeah, I go for Collingwood, which I've never been to a Collingwood game. I don't know that much about footy.
No.
I like watching it when it's on. But, just decided to go for the most hated team to be controversial.
It's a good way of actually working out who your real friends are, isn't it?
That's my story there. But Brian, tell us a bit, aside from footy and hating the Green Bay Packers, what do you do in ministry?
So I have been with Power to Change for a little bit over 11 years. And I originally came in looking after the resources web store. So I still do that, but it's the minor part of my role. Primarily what I do is in HR. A lot of the admin stuff, just the day-to-day of... I just call myself the email king.
You're the general.
I am the email king. I literally send emails all day long. I will literally get to the end of the day and I've sent 50 emails in a day. Send 40, receive 40, send 50, and maybe I've beaten Collingwood along the way. So
there you go.
Yeah. Look, it's kind of a cool job in a way because I get to interact with people very early in their journey with Power to Change, where they are, applying, they're getting an application back, they're working their way through the application process, and I'm very much kind of that sort of touch point early on if they've got questions, and then when people get accepted to raise up a team of ministry partners, I interact with them again. And then when people get to the point where they've completed their ministry partner development, then I help work with them to get them on payroll and to report, do some of the admin to report for ministry. And then I do the other end where when people actually get to a point where they realise that it's time to move on from Power to Change, sadly, I work with people when they're going through their exit process. And that's a really important thing, to really help people leave well and to really help people feel loved in the process, because processes can feel very mechanised sometimes, and it's just so important to make sure that people feel that they're cared about, even though it's 90% of its communication is via email. Just to make sure that people really kind of feel loved through it, and really kind of have a glimpse of Power to Change as a family of people who love Jesus and love one another and really want to care for people well. So that kind of gives you a hopefully a little bit of a glimpse.
Yeah, so that's cool because it's kind of a mix of both a technical and a personal, like, relational role.
Yes, yeah. So I had a long background before I arrived at Power to Change. I had a long background in kind of customer-facing roles. It's a long time in customer service and a lot of time using databases. So I'm a bit of a non-technical database nerd. I like to nerd out with a spreadsheet from time to time, so that makes me feel pretty happy. And so I think some of those, it's interesting. There's a kind of sense that there's nothing we ever do for God that goes to waste. And I think it's pretty cool that some of those things that I learned before I worked for Christian organisations and things that I've kind of learned over the years, the things that I can bring to where I am now.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like the more and more I keep doing these and hearing about different roles in ministry, the more I'm like, wow, there's so many different ways to serve the Lord under, like, the umbrella that Power to Change is, or that Crew is. There's just all these different avenues within that kind of fall under the umbrella that are super specific and different. Like I first came when I was on campus, and then kind of moved over to here as a filmmaker for a digital team. Have you always been in this role? Because you're in member services, correct? That's technically where you fall in this. Have you always been on that role, or were you ever on campus first or anything?
No. So before I worked for Power to Change, I worked for a large church in Melbourne and they actually had a bookshop, and I ran that. I'm a book nerd. I'm the kind of person who has, I think currently I've got maybe 3 book piles. So on the weekend I managed to finish 2 books I was reading, and that was just so exciting because I could put them away on my bookshelf in my library and get out a few more books. And so I'm just obsessed with books. I love reading, and I'll read good Christian writing, and I'll read literary fiction, and I'll do the whole thing. So where I sort of came into Power to Change was through this kind of context of having run a Christian book retailing space, and then when Power to Change moved their offices from Sydney to Melbourne back in the later part of the last decade, the chappie who did the resources role there wasn't able to move to Melbourne, so that's where I came in. I haven't done any campus ministry. It's an interesting one. So I'm an employee. I'm not a missionary. So it's a slightly different world. There's things that employees do that missionaries don't, and there's things that missionaries do that employees don't necessarily do. So it is a little bit of a different world, but you do need nerdy admin, boring people in an organisation, as well as the kind of the groovy superheroes. Because often what happens is in a Christian organisation, what can often happen is those who are leaders, who are visionaries, who are kind of the vision casters, they're often brilliant at communicating and brilliant at the big picture stuff, but, admin's not really their thing. And that's totally appropriate, We all have kind of different gifts. So, so that would be my kind of thinking. I do have a hope that I might get to do some online evangelism this year. I've got a relationship with the Irish entity of Crew, which is called Agape. Huh. So I've been to their office and kind of chewed the fat with their ND a couple of years ago. And so I have a bit of a connection with them. So they're going to do an online kind of evangelism or internet evangelism thing. So I'm hoping to get involved in that. And,
what would that look like?
I think it's basically just a kind of like a chat forum, and people come along and say, hey, I want to know about Jesus, or I want to know this or that. And I've got kind of the benefit that I came from a Catholic background, so I have an understanding of Catholicism if people are coming out of that sort of paradigm, or and sort of a little bit of an understanding of what's gone on in Ireland over the last sort of 20, 50 years. So hopefully my grey hairs can help me do that. And it's interesting. I sometimes get into kind of sort of online chat situations about books, and then I'll kind of talk to people, sort of say, maybe this trying to tell us this or that, or so I always try and sort of have a little bit of a sense of trying to hopefully open people up to the idea that there is a good and loving God who wants to have a relationship with you, and that's the best thing you can ever do with your life. So.
All in the online form, which was this conversation happening especially before government shutdowns, people working from home? That conversation was already happening?
Yeah, it's reasonably recent, yeah. But
has that expedited like crazy since everybody's on their devices at home a lot more now?
I don't know the answer to that one. Yeah, possibly. I think it's really interesting at the moment with communicating with people in the current reality, in that I think there's almost kind of like a bell curve. So people start off and everyone's really cool about wanting to get on Zoom and, get into conversations and communicate like mad. And then everyone kind of gets Zoom fatigue and
I'd rather have a machete to my shins than do another Zoom call.
And this is it. People get Zoom fatigue and all of that. And I think I had 3 Zoom calls in the space of a week, about a month ago. And it just killed me. I was like a zombie at the end of a zombie at the end of it. And these were like nighttime Zoom calls with.
Is that original, or did you?
No, I don't think it's original. I don't think it is actually. But
I haven't heard that before.
I'm happy to pinch it, and
you heard it here first.
Yeah, there is a real. It's interesting actually doing what I've done before here, just doing a recording here, and whenever you write a piece of, communication, and around spiritual themes and those kind of things, is nothing really is original. So I'm always very conscious that I don't want to plagiarize.
Yeah,
so
smart.
I'll just kind of attribute madly. So the same thing with Zoombie. So it's probably an anon, but it's not mine.
Yeah, that's funny though. So how has your role changed recently? So you already before pandemic and everything like that. Were in that space of being kind of, a lot of emails, the king of emails even, and working with people. How have you noticed a shift in your job over the last, 3 months or so? If you have at all.
I don't know if I've really seen much, because most of my communication is electronic. I'm still in the office a couple of days a week, and the main difference I probably noticed is that usually we run training for new missionaries whenever they get accepted to do ministry partner development. We run this thing called NMO, New Missionary Orientation. Now usually I've kind of, one of my other things I do, one of my moonlighting jobs here is I do a bit of catering when required. So I have done catering for this event, and and in recent times, I just cater the first day, but I've catered the whole event in times past. But that's a really cool opportunity to meet the people you've been kind of communicating with over months, and have a kind of a chat and kind of get to know people a bit, and almost kind of you get to develop friendships as well. Like we've got one guy up in Sydney who's with our youth strategy. Lovely guy, awesome guy. But he looks a little bit like the you heard of Jason Statham?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like kind of British macho, shaved head, real tough guy.
Guy you don't want to
So I
mess
just
with.
call him Jason, this guy, because he looks a bit like Jason Statham. So he looks a little bit like Jason Statham, but he's just the sweetest and kindest person you could meet. But it's almost like it fits, and it's really funny at the same time. So, yeah.
That's cool. So, kind of as we're wrapping up, you obviously have a really different role within Power to Change than a lot of people are even aware of. It's a needed role. It's necessary because people like me suck at emails and correspondence and like all of the admin roles that are very necessary to keep things afloat and going, and the process of getting people in smoothly, getting people out with grace and with care. For anybody watching that maybe wants to serve in a similar capacity as to what you do, where their giftings are more on the administration side of things, technical, but also want to be relationally invested in people while using those giftings like you're doing, do you have any encouragement for them as to... maybe think of yourself before you came on staff at Power to Change, thinking about, joining as an employee even and all of that. I know that you're technically an employee, but kind of somebody who might have been where you were at.
I think I think where it's interesting is that while there's obviously a difference between being a missionary and an employee, there is an element that it's still a spiritual calling to a large degree, and I think there really is an opportunity to just live out your faithfulness in your relationship with God doing something like this. It's not going to be a job for a high flyer, I think there is an element with a role like this where you sort of do die to yourself a little bit. So it's really quite a character shaping thing, and I'm thankful that there's been an influence there on me. It's an interesting one. I didn't really get a call to come to Power to Change in the traditional sense, but when I finished my previous job, I realised that I'd had maybe 5 or 6 jobs over the previous decade that all went kind of 2 to 4 years, and I sort of said to God, it'd be lovely if I could just stay somewhere for a decade and kind of put my roots down and do things well and kind of feel that I can have a longer term plan, because I'm a little bit of an in-the-moment person. And so guess what? I've been here 11 years, and it's like that's been a little bit of a glimpse of God's grace in my context. I don't know what else I would probably tell you. Most of the people that who do come into our office in missionary roles that are often, tech-based, so that people like yourself or Josh or Lewis who are computer programmers. I don't know where. I wonder whether the old style admin person is a reality that's kind of disappearing in our wider workforce, and how that exactly works. Because we still do a lot of things manually. Like if you're doing, hypothetically, let's say you want to run training in a corporate setting, you don't do it with a teacher anymore. It's all online teaching tools. Now you need somebody who's got programming skills to design a training course for you in that context. So ours is a little bit different. So I wonder where where your exact fit is going, because so much now is technical. So if somebody comes in and says, yeah, I'm a database nerd, they'll know programming languages and stuff like that, where I don't.
Right.
That was a very long answer to a very short question.
No, that's good. Well, thank you so much again for the work that you're doing. It's definitely needed, and clearly, I've received a lot of very important emails from you in terms of knowing what Zoom call I got to be on recently, what time that's taking place, and yeah, people that are gifted like you help out people like me a lot. So we do appreciate it. I appreciate your work because I'm clearly a direct beneficiary of it. But I'd love to pray for you and just thank God for what you're doing. God, we thank you so much for Brian. We thank you for the work that he's doing here. God, we thank you that you have combined both a deep love and care of people and wanting to serve people and die to self. And God, we thank you that you've combined that beautifully with a attention to detail and a attentiveness to just the precise things that go into a ministry like this that keep things running and functioning and help serve people better. So God, we thank you for Brian. Thank you for the work that he's doing. I pray that, anybody watching this right now that is gifted similarly, that wants to know how can I serve Jesus, would see this and would even respond to your calling on their life, Lord, to serve with the gifts that they've been given. So thank you for Brian. Thank you for this time, getting to learn a bit about his life and how you're using him. Pray this all in your precious name, Jesus. Amen. Thanks,
Amen.
Brian.
Thank you, Michael.